Hey everybody, and welcome back to the TSG Bikecast. I'm your host, Steve Tamsoff, and I hope everyone is going great. In this episode, I've sat down with Samantha McMahon. Sam's a mountaineer and mountain bike rider from high country Victoria. Her story, it goes back well into her early 20s with some pretty horrific injuries that probably would have stopped most people in their tracks to continue on to what she's actually accomplished in later years, including summiting some of the biggest peaks on the planet, including Mount Everest, and also just recently in August competing in the Silk Road mountain bike race in Kyrgyzstan. And there's 100 million other stories that we're going to get into in this episode. It's a long one, so strap in. Thanks for listening as always, and let's go. Awesome. All right, cool. So let's get into it then. So where were you born and where'd you grow up? Fill us in.
So I was born in Denny, Deniliquin. And for the first 12 years of life, grew up on a cattle and rice farm about 50 k's out of town. A little bit closer to Walkall than Denny, but went to school and stuff in Denny. Grew up riding motorbikes and stuff a little bit, but obviously in the flattest part of Australia. And then mum and dad sold the farm. We moved to Bateman's Bay over on the coast. Yeah. So that was pretty nice. I didn't talk to mum and dad for a while because I was a bit of a farm girl. So I was pretty when I'd leave the farm. But so did high school over there. And then I finished school. I actually applied to go to the army and I got in, but turn of events, when I'd sort of finished school, I was working for the guy that owned the business next door to mum and dad. One of my uncles, he was actually riding his pushy. He was road cycling and a car went onto the wrong side of the road and hit and killed him. So that was like just out the front of, so mum's family are from Moolameen, so out west as well, not too far from Denny, and had 7,000 acres out there. So I ended up moving out to the farm and lived with my uncle's wife and two kids, and because they were 5 and 7 when their dad passed away. So hung out, helped look after them, helped my uncle run the farm, and just kept an eye on my grandmother as well because she was pretty devastated. And so my original march out date was actually meant to be on my 19th birthday, and just I didn't feel like I could leave the family yet, so I pushed that back. And then I don't know, looking for more excuses not to leave the farm again. Once I was back out there, I sort of pushed it back again, and my grandmother was like, "You need to do something." And so I applied for uni in Bendigo then. So ended up going to Bendigo and just going to uni there, so I could still maintain that sort of close contact with the family in Moolameen as well. Wasn't too far from them. Did an arts degree and double majored in psychology and sociology politics there, and then went into a bit of work with youth in Bendigo, so kids that are in the out-of-home care system, and really loved that kind of work. When I started studying, I didn't know if I wanted to do psych or more social work, and once I sort of worked a bit, then I decided I probably wanted to be a social worker. So my uni years doing my undergrad as well, I think, formed that. So she was a bit of a roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. You took on a lot of responsibility young and gave up your plans to help family, which is totally admirable. And then, so we obviously know why you got into social work, but why did you do an arts degree? Were you well into art your whole life, or?
No, so it was more to still focus. There was a lot of options in the humanities there, which I'd always had an interest in. And I think it was probably while I was at Bendigo, like growing up, I always played a lot of netball and stuff. I played Aussie rules for a quarter and a half in the under 14s boys team in Denny when I was still living there, and broke my arm in the second quarter. So that was kind of the end of my footy career.
Short-lived career.
Yeah. But in Bendigo, I sort of started going to the gym there and got into a fair bit of running and stuff too. So although that would also send me, I guess, a bit on the path that I've come to now. So my my undergrad at uni, which I guess also formed my decision to go into social work. So it was a bit of a roller coaster. So first year I was in a car accident and shattered my left leg. So I've got a metal rod and some screws holding that together now.
So that was in 2008, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then then I sort of got through that, 3 months on crutches, got back into running again. And then it was April. So April, might have been 3rd or 4th, whatever date it was of Run for Kids that year. So I'd had just a little bit of discomfort in my right sort of groin and glute, and I couldn't work it out. And I just thought, I'll just do this run, and then, I'll have some rest after that. Just thinking I needed a bit of concrete, really. Just needed to harden up, and started running. And then I went down there, and so luckily some good Samaritans called an ambulance for me, and I was in a bit of pain, and they took me to St V's in Melbourne. And at this point, like, I was training to do Melbourne Marathon. I love running, and I couldn't imagine sort of doing much else besides running at this point. And then got to St V's, and I think the doctor was just having a bit of a bad day, so he told me I didn't need an X-ray, that it was most likely a minor muscle injury, and referred me to the physio. And then they sent me home on crutches because my foot wouldn't touch the ground, and then told me to go see the GP in 4 days if it still hurt. And then the next day I woke up. Luckily, my best friend was with me, and I'm like, I can't move. And because the ambos had sort of given me a bit of morphine, some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So she took me to the hospital in Bendigo, and the physio there, she's like, what happened? Did you have an X-ray? I said, no. And so I had an X-ray. Anyway, cut a long story short. So they put some screws in it, hoping it would heal, but it had been a day and a half that there obviously was no blood supply getting to the bone in my hip. So just stayed on crutches for a few months, kept having tests to see if there's any healing. That wasn't happening. And then the guys in Bendigo didn't know what to do. I was only 23, and they'd never really dealt with a 23-year-old with that kind of injury before. So they referred me to Melbourne when I met my surgeon, Andrew, who is still my surgeon. I'm pretty lucky to have him. And so he took the screws out, and I was meant to have an exam for uni the next day, and they were like, no, don't worry, just get your hip sorted. And then did MRI and stuff like that. So this is November by the time I'm having this surgery, after quite a long time on crutches. And then he took the screws out and did an MRI, and he called me. He's like, oh, Sam, I'm sorry, I can't save your hip. I have to give you a replacement. I was like, okay, cool. And so the one thing I knew from that was that I wasn't allowed to run anymore, that meant. So we're like going in for surgery, and he's like, we'll have a chat after the surgery. I know this isn't the outcome we wanted. And so anyway, I did that. And then while in hospital, I met my physio, Scott, who I also became good mates with in the end, because we just watched heaps of cricket because I was in hospital for 10 days. So we bonded over a bit of cricket. And then he worked out that I was probably going to be very compliant with physio. So we then started talking about not so much what I couldn't do, but what I could do and what my options were going to be. So that's, I guess, when bikes got introduced into my life. So one sport they did talk about a lot with me was cycling. So I was like, okay. And the gym where I was working in Bendigo, there were quite a few cyclist roadies that would come into the gym. Bendigo is a pretty well-known roadie area. And so, yeah, as I was rehabbing for the 3 months to get off the crutches, I started looking at road bikes, and Pete Moroney, who was a bit of a legend around Bendigo's bikes, went into his shop and saw him. And I think everyone's probably that has anything to do with any sort of cycling in Australia has heard of Peter Mullins. Yep. And so Peter she'd just sort of come back into the road scene after a bit of time off, and had got this Apollo bike, and Pete's like, well, Peter's riding one of these and we could probably sort you out. So got my first road bike then, and started riding bikes. And then these guys started talking about this round the Bay in a day ride that they do out of Melbourne, and pretty well known, just to, like, different distances. Any amateur can kind of get on board and have a go at it. And the boys were talking to me about the 250K, and I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh, that'll be 10 months post-surgery. And so then I call my surgeon and I'm like, Andrew, am I allowed to train to do a 250K bike ride? It'll be in October. And he giggled, and then he's like, if you think you can do it, by all means, like, I'm not going to stop you. Cycling's absolutely fine. You just can't run. I'm like, okay, fair enough.
That's pretty amazing to go through a car accident, a busted leg, and then go straight into like a completely random hip surgery, and then go, fuck it, I'm going to go ride a bike 250Ks 10 months later. It's like, not many people would do that.
No, well, and I don't know. I think that's where, coming back from these injuries, I'm like, I seem to respond well to challenges. And so I think that was kind of the beginning for me. It's like, all right, well, it's not going to be easy, but I think I've learned time and time again. I mean, and even with my experiences with my uncles and stuff like that, it's like life is going to throw shit at you pretty regularly sometimes. So we then, I mean, haven't even discussed yet that a month after I got off crutches, my little sister was diagnosed with leukemia. And so that, like, this was the 3 years of my undergrad at uni. It was quite a big celebration when I finally got that degree done.
I bet.
But like, so me recovering from that and then her being diagnosed, like, I think she also drove me. And it's interesting because everyone always says to me, oh, like, how do you do this? How do you achieve so much? So I'm like, it's the people around me. And it's even one of my best friends, Anne, she was with me all through uni, and a lot of these challenges that I had when I had the car accident, the hip surgeries, my sister being sick. I'm like, she's like, I don't do anything though. I'm not inspiring. I'm like, no, but it's the people around you that these people have like blind belief in me.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you didn't believe that I could do it, I wouldn't believe that I can do it. And so, and it's like, I think it's more important, you can have a strong mind, you can have goals and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't have a rad group of people around you that believe in you, that support you, like, you've got fucking nothing really.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the world, they passively are heroes without even knowing it. They're just unspoken, and you realize after you've achieved a goal, you go, oh wait a minute, this person was always there for me, but they think they did nothing, but yet I've achieved it because of them partly.
Yeah, exactly. So like my sister, I think she made sure I had zero excuses then. So like, sure enough, so I went back for my 12-month checkup after I'd been sort of going to and from Sydney, because I was a match for stem cells and bone marrow for my sister. So I was up and down from Sydney a lot, just donating whatever she would need and having all these tests. And in amongst that, I shaved my head. She was really upset about losing her hair. I'm like, she's like, oh, I think I'll look like an alien. I'm like, my ears stick out way more than yours. So I'll be like an alien. You'll look beautiful. And so, yeah, I shaved my head as well. And we like managed to raise a fair bit of money for the Leukemia Foundation. So that gym community that I had in Bendigo was amazing. Like, I think we raised $5,000 in 2 weeks or something. Like, it was really good. And then, because when I'm injured, like, it's me, I'm in control of the situation. So I actually don't feel so bad about it, or I know there's things I can do. But I found when my sister got sick, I felt so out of control, and like there was nothing I could do. So it was like all these little things. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, that's something I can at least do to make her feel a little bit better. Because she actually ended up pretty crook. So, but she's probably, her and I definitely are like, I think she's probably almost more stubborn than me, which is great, because it's funny. Definitely went against what the doctors were saying quite a few times. So
So did she come through her leukemia okay in the end?
She did. She got bloody sick and scared the shit out of all of us.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, but I remember she was actually in an induced coma to try and get her body to recover, and she woke up and she looked at me and she's like, am I going to make it? And I'm like, I don't think I've ever had to force myself to be so composed in all my life. I'm like, of course you are. like you just needed a rest. You've just been asleep because the doctors needed to give you a rest so you can recover. You're going to get better. And the doctors actually weren't saying that at the time. And so I'm like, so you just have to get better now. It was funny because she was on all these drugs and so she was hallucinating quite a bit. And so one day she said to me, "Who's that?" And I'm like, "Where?" We were alone in a room. And she's like, "Those people." And I'm looking around. I'm like, "What people?" She's like, "The people in the attic."
Oh
And I'm like,
boy.
"Oh." I'm like, "Don't worry about them. It's okay." But she'd be like this. And then half an hour later, I bribed her into letting the nurses do all of her physical therapy. And I said, "If you let the nurses do that, I'll give you a foot massage." And and I was being a bit of a nasty sister because I'm like, well, she'll probably forget, so I don't have to do it. Sure. Like 2 hours later, she's like, "When do I get my foot massage?" I'm like, "Mate, and 2 hours ago you thought there were people in the attic. How do you remember that I bloody promised you a foot massage?"
You thought you had it.
Yeah. But yeah, so that, like, I think it was two, because she was in Westmead Children. She's 9 years younger than me. So all that time too, and just spent in the kids' oncology ward, like it actually really gives you no excuses, like not be out there doing what you can with your life while you've got it. And that I think was the final thing where I'm like, I want to work with kids. I like, they're so, like, kids are so amazing and so inspiring. And so I'm like, all right, I think that's what I want to do. So yeah, like I think all that, I mean, my whole undergrad experience then made me sort of work out what I wanted to do. So that was good, and got through it. Actually became very good mates with my coordinator, because I was forever on the phone to her being like, "Can we change my exam? Can you unenroll me? I'm not going to finish the last semester. My sister's no good." To then calling her back being like, "The doctors reckon she's going to be all right. Can you re-enroll me?" and everything. So yeah, it was very tumultuous, but
Oh, I bet pretty,
yeah.
pretty rough time in your life, but I'm sure, you've obviously learned a lot for it. So when you finished your degree and everything was sort of starting to clear up and you could forge forwards, what were your next plans?
So I've been dreaming for ages about getting to South America. That was the first place, like, when I was a kid. So my grandmother's sister used to work for a multitude of global organisations, the UN and the like. So she used to travel a lot when I was a kid, and at Christmas we'd get all these cool presents from Africa, the Middle East. And she gave me an atlas one year, and I reckon it's the best gift I ever got. And so it just had all the statistics, the languages, the currencies of all the different countries. And I became quite focused on South America, I think just because I was reading about the diversity of the cultures there, and it looked beautiful. There was mountains there. And so, yeah, the first thing I did, I was a little bit hungover, actually, feeling sorry for myself. And I'd started doing work with some young kids at this point. But I think it was the day after New Year's Day, so I had a delayed New Year's celebration. I was a bit hungover, and then just booked some flights to South America, and then went to work 2 days later and said to my bosses, "Oh, I need 3.5 months off. I just booked some flights to South America." And they were like, "What if we say no?" I'm like, "Oh, that's fine. I'll just quit." And they're like, "No, take as long as you need." And I think, and that was when I first saw big mountains and got to experience them. And then that's, like, I went to Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Brazil. And but it was probably, yeah, the Andes that had the biggest impact on me. And I loved it. Went to altitude for the first time, and I was like, "Oh, this is hard, but I liked it." And then, yeah, just met some really cool people too. And then I just thought my life has to revolve around traveling, and I did a lot of cool stuff even over there. So I actually came back from that trip and bought my first 26R Focus hardtail, I think I got when I came back. But I did hide a bike in Bolivia and went and did Death Road. In Ecuador, again, like, went up Cotopaxi volcano and then rode down that on bikes as well, and just loved it. And so, yeah, I was back in at Moroni's and talking to Pete. I needed some gloves for my road bike or something. I'm like, "Oh, I think I want to get a mountain bike too." And he said, "Oh, we have this here." And he's like, I'll do you a bit of a deal. I'm like, all right. And so anyway, I walked out with a really expensive pair of roadie gloves, but at least I got a free mountain bike with them. So that was
Nice.
good. Yeah.
That's everyone's dream.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just a little cross country whippet, super light. So even then I did, compared to obviously what I do now in Bright, it was a bit more just for rail trails and some of the stuff around Bendigo, because that would have been 2012, I reckon.
Yeah, right on.
Go. But yeah, like then I was doing a mix of the road and just getting out in the bush and stuff a bit. And yeah, just loved it.
So in that time, were you instantly planning on what you're going to do next? Tackle bigger mountains, ride other places? What was the next step?
Yeah, well, still, yeah, I'm always researching places to go and things to do. So next I actually went to the States next and stayed with a heap of friends that I'd met in South America. So I was there for a month. And that was just a bit of hiking, catching up with friends. And I liked it there, but I think for me, I've worked out I'm much more interested in really different cultures and stuff. So the next trip I planned after that was in 2014. I went to Borneo for a month and planned to climb Mount Kinabalu there, which is just over 4,000 meters. And then I just did heaps of hiking went sort of deep bush into the rainforest and did heaps of hiking and stuff there. And it was kind of cool on Kinabalu, like you sort of get up into the alpine pretty quickly. And again, like it was like pretty tough. Like we just up and back in 2 days. But I felt like I was pushing myself pretty hard and really liked that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I worked pretty hard, did lots of overtime and stuff. And also in 2013, 2014, I was doing my social work masters and working as much as possible as well. And always handing my assignments in about 30 seconds before the cutoff time, because I was like,
Nice.
sacrifice anything. And I'm a mad procrastinator. Like I get really fit and the house is always really clean when I'm doing any sort of studying. But I then decided that I wanted Nepal was another place that had been, especially after being in the Andes, I started looking at mountain ranges and I'm like, oh, the Himalayas, like that looks incredible. So I applied and got a working holiday visa for France as well. So my plan was to go to Sri Lanka, was somewhere else I was really interested to go to: Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, and then to France and sort of study some French and cruise around Europe for a year. And so I went to Nepal in early 2015, went trekking in the Annapurna Sanctuary, so up to Annapurna Base Camp, and then went to Everest Base Camp, and just met so many locals there that were so lovely. And I remember it was maybe the third last night I was meant to be in Kathmandu, and one of my mates was a guide and one of his friends was a DJ. So we went to this guy's bar in Kathmandu, and then he's like, oh, I'm going to DJ at my cousin's 18th birthday party if you want to come. So went and crashed this birthday party and met like a whole group of people there. And it was funny, when I was just back in Nepal this year, we worked out we've all been mates for 7 years now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Birthday party. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were in Nepal, you actually left and then the earthquake happened, right? Was that on that trip? Yeah. And then you flew back, right?
Yeah. So I flew to Bhutan. And I was out trekking, and I got some blisters in Nepal, and but I thought they'd healed. So I was out trekking in Bhutan, and I started to get a bad pain in my heel, and then I realized after, again, I'm getting better at not having concrete and hardening up and maybe listening to what my body's trying to tell me, but I did keep going for a few days on it, and then it just got to the point where I couldn't walk on it. And we were at a look, and my heel had turned black and my calf had started to swell, and I'm like, I think I've got a bit of an infection. And so I'm like, I need to go to the hospital. And we were driving to the hospital and just happened to stop because they were developing all the roads in Bhutan at that time, so they'd have set road closures. And like all the trees around started shaking and stuff. And I was looking around and I'm like, it's not windy. Like what's going on? And then we felt the car move a bit. And the guide, he was like, oh, I think it was a small earthquake. And I'm like, oh, like, is that common? He's like, oh, we don't have so many. And I'm like, oh, okay. And thought nothing else of it. Then went to the hospital and got some antibiotics for my foot, and then went back, was at a hotel and turned on the news and then saw that what we had felt had been the earthquake from Nepal, and we were 850 kilometers away. I'm like, if we felt that here, like, my God, it must be like.
Yeah, because it hit just like it was like 80 k's from Kathmandu or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, in Gorka.
Yeah.
And so then I started trying to contact everyone in Nepal that I'd met and made friends with, and got a couple of responses. And I'm like, and so then I just started contacting my airline. I'm like, I need to put off my flight to France. And then by, I guess, like maybe a twist of fate, I was at like a Buddhist, this was a couple of days later then. So, and I'd had another trip to the hospital in the meantime, so they ended up having to cut my heel open and stuff. And because the infection, the antibiotics didn't hit it. And so that meant for a few days, I couldn't really do much anyway. And so I went to this Buddhist festival and I met a woman there. Her name's Fiona. And we got chatting and we're talking about Nepal. And she said, my husband's Nepalese. And she said, we actually have an NGO that we run over there and they focus on early childhood education. And she said, I think Durga's going to go over there. And I said, well, I think I'm going to go back. And she said, all right. Oh, so she then connected us. And she said, when he's on the ground, he'll get in touch with you. And I said, okay, perfect. And then talking to my friends in Kathmandu, I was just like, what's access to money like? What, can I bring anything from here? And they said, maybe just get some money because we don't know, everyone's kind of panicking and stuff. And I was like, okay. So then I just started taking money out of ATMs, and the Bhutanese people are so lovely. And so I had a guide with me, and he's like explaining to them that I was taking so much time because I was taking money out to take to Nepal, and they were all like, no, take as long as you want. Like we don't mind. And they were even having big prayer ceremonies for the Nepalese people in their monasteries and that kind of thing as well. And so ended up getting back on a plane it was a commercial flight, but there was 3 of us on the flight, and then just boxes of aid that the king had sent back, the king of Bhutan. And got back to Nepal, and it was a bit chaotic. So went to where one of my friends' hotels is, and then everyone was sleeping outside, so we're just sleeping outside. Then I was able to connect with a few different groups, and I'm like, well, I have money. What do people need? And so after sort of a week, a group of really clever local students had developed a bit of a program where you could input where you'd been, what you dropped, and what other people needed and stuff like that. And it was nuts because my friends were like, what can we do? I said, well, I'm just taking money and filling trucks with what people need. And I'm like, that's probably the most direct way. So friends were sending money to me, and like for $1,000, you could fill a truck with like rice, blankets, tarts, corrugated iron, whatever they needed. So we were just sending truckloads of stuff out. And then Durga arrived. So Fiona, who I'd met in Bhutan, they live in New Zealand now. She's actually British though, and he's Nepalese, but they live in New Zealand. And he also, similar to me, but probably a bit more, arrived with just bags of cash, same thing. And then we went out to the villages where they support, which are in an area called Sindapalchuk, and they had the highest number of casualties and the most damage to the houses out there too. So initially it was just about helping get shelter for people. So we're building just temporary shelters with corrugated iron, some star pickets, and basically whatever we could get our hands on, tarts over that, and then just getting blankets and stuff out there. And then started looking at building more, we were calling them cottages. So I'm like, we can build cottages, so it was more stable structures and for families that they could sort of live in. And then I ended up being there was there for another almost 6 months at this point. So we sort of did all that living stuff, hygiene stuff as well, and then started getting back into getting the schools back up and running as well. So we were staying with a school principal and his family in the local areas, and all of the big like NGOs, they were hitting all the towns on the main road, but there was so much off the main road where you'd need to take a Jeep and stuff to get to. But there were so many of those places we'd go to, and they're like, people still needed like materials for houses and stuff like that. So when we were going to check on the schools, we'd be talking to the locals and like, all right, what do you need? And then doing runs back in and bringing the stuff back out as well. And then, yeah, we started setting up temporary learning spaces for the kids and stuff like that. And like it was, and this like the people, and this is when I think my heart just started belonging to Nepal, because the people, like they had nothing, like their houses are gone, everything is gone, but they're still, you know, they've got cucumbers in their garden, so they're offering you like cucumbers to eat or like anything they could give. And I'm like, no, it's fine, I can go to the city and get what I need. I'm perfectly fine. And they were just so generous and just so resilient. There was no complaints. They were so grateful for like even one blanket, you know. And I had a lot, like, and even throughout the pandemic, there's like, we were very lucky here. And people would say, you know, like, oh, I have to go to work for 20 hours to get my job keeper or whatever. I'm like, but you're getting money. And so I think, and maybe it's why I like spending my time a lot in developing countries. It's like there's just, people are happy and they don't have a lot. And I think you can learn so much from that.
Absolutely. I'm totally on the same page as you, mate. You know, I've ridden motorbikes across a few countries now, and I spent a lot of time in Sri Lanka as well. And like they've just come through a civil war, you know, and they're having trouble again now, unfortunately. But when I was there, you're going up into the north of Sri Lanka, where it was still just beaten down by the government, but yet they were still so kind and generous to us wherever we rolled up, you know. Even the military were really nice to us and giving us cold drinks, going, "Oh, look at you all the way out here." It's like, well, this is, yeah, okay. We wouldn't get this in Australia, but yeah, through all the bad stuff they go through, they still have the kindest hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's why now I'm just like, half of my heart will always be in Nepal forever.
absolutely. So after you finished all that up, what was the plan after that? Obviously, your whole worldview changed again. Another
Yeah.
big thing that impacted your life. What was the next step?
Yeah, well, so this is where my mountaineering journey at a more serious level starts. So, in amongst doing all this stuff out in the villages, I was back in Kathmandu a bit as well. And I was teaching my friend's daughter to swim. And we're at the pool. And then there was these guys there. They had floaties and stuff on, and they were watching us sometimes. And I said, "Oh, do you guys know how to swim?" And they're like, "Oh, no, not really." And I said, "Do you want me to teach you?" And they said, "Oh, if that's okay." And then um, so I started teaching them to swim, and then I find out, so it's like 6 of these boys, and between them they've summited Everest 37 times, but they don't know how to swim. And so then I'm like, all right, we can do some bartering here. And so I was like, well, if you teach me how to climb, I'll teach you how to swim. And that was like kind of the beginning of it then. So we would just start it at the climbing wall. We'd go out and do some outdoor rock stuff. And then just going to a climbing wall in Kathmandu, if you're there either side of the main climbing seasons, you're going to meet basically all of, or most of the guides anyway. And so, yeah, I then just got some really nice links into the climbing community just from in Nepal, just from going to the climbing wall and then doing some outdoor trips with the guys and stuff. And so I did eventually go to France, but then just thinking about the Himalayas and working towards then making plans. So I was planning to be in Europe for a year, and I was going to do that, but I'd then happened to make plans to come back to Nepal in the spring. Then to the boys were going to take me to my first 6,000 meter peak, and so we ended up actually when I came back, they're like, well, let's do two. And I'm like, okay, sure. And they're like, you'll be fine. I'm like, okay, if you say so. And so it was really good. One of I call him my brother, Wongda, and another good friend, Durba. So Durba, he was actually at the aspirant point in doing his international mountain guide course. So in Nepal, it takes a few years, and so Wongda and I were just going together, and we happened to meet Durba up in a village near where we were heading to Island Peak, and he's like, "Oh, what are you guys doing?" We're like, "Oh, we're just going to climb Island Peak. Do you want to come?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." So he ended up coming with us, and then he had a group of clients cancel for whatever reason. He's like, "What are you doing now?" I'm like, "Oh, we might go over. We're going to go over to Mira Peak. Do you want to come to Mira?" And he's like, "Oh, sure. Is that okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's absolutely fine." And so he ended up coming the whole way with us to Mira as well. And so Wongda, he actually ended up getting a heli back out from Mira, and Durwa and I ended up walking out together, and it started snowing one night, and it snowed quite deep. So he and I had to break trail the next day to get over this pass. And we were just like laughing the whole way and coming down the pass. So we'd sent one of our duffel bags each, and it had like our crampons and like our high mountain gear that we're like, well, we don't need that. We'll send that in the helicopter. And we're coming down this pass, and we're like, shit, like crampons actually probably would have been handy here. um, so we were like walking down, and I remember he slipped over, and then there was a couple of porters ahead of us that had slipped over. So we were making sure they're all right. Then we're all back up. Well, and at this point, I hadn't slipped yet. But then I was like, is everyone okay? And as I put my hands up, then I slipped down the hill. And we're just like, oh, what is going on? But it's like, and I don't know, it's probably the same, like if you've done motorbike trips into sort of some more remote places, like the bonds that you make in these situations are just so tight, so fast. And it's like these people just instantly become your family.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it
Absolutely.
was coming back from that trip. So one day he's like, oh, so they gave me a Sherpa name after this trip. They think I must have been Sherpa in a previous life. So he gave me the name Pemayanji, which is my Sherpa name. But um, he then introduced me back at the climbing wall to a Nepalese woman named Funzo, who's about my age. And speaking of fast connection, so her and I just climbed together one day, and we were just chatting, and she's like, I want to start climbing mountains as well. And she had plans for the upcoming spring to go to Choyu. And after climbing with the boys and just having an absolute time, I'm like, let's do more climbing in the autumn season. So I was planning to climb the Buche and Amadublam. And she said, oh, maybe I'll come to Amadublam when I come back from Choyu. And I said, yes, you should. And so we started spending quite a bit of time together. So I then bounced back to Europe. So I'd started going back and forth a bit. And so we made some plans then for the autumn and just kept in touch the entire time. And I met her daughter, and the boys were like, you two should climb together. And so like, all right, we'll start prioritizing some time in the mountains together. And she successfully climbed Choyu and did it like with very little support. So she's
How high was that peak?
8,000. What's Choyu? Oh, I should know. It's just over 8 though. I think it's the 10th, maybe the 10th highest. God.
Yeah, because it starts when it's hitting the death zone, right?
Yeah, you do. Yeah. So it's so there's Choyu and Shishapangma in Tibet. So and then obviously Everest as well that you can climb from the Tibet side. So yeah, it's hitting the death zone. And she's like just she's from an area of Nepal called the Chum Valley, which was actually only opened up to the rest of the world, I guess, in 2008. So it's quite remote. It's insanely beautiful. And but Funzo, she sort of had an arranged marriage when she was quite young. She has a daughter, Zing, who's 12 and amazing. I love her. And so I was like, all right, I want to climb with her again, right? It's like people that you can be inspired by.
Mm-hmm.
And she's another one of these people that constantly inspires me. So it was, like I think in the space of 12 months, I met so many incredible people in Nepal. And just, developed, I think being in these situations, developed quite tight friendships with them and feeling like family. And so, yeah, I went back to Europe and did some training in the Alps. So spent a bit of time in the Alps there, which are just, I mean, any mountains, I just love it. It's why I can't imagine living anywhere else in Australia now that I'm here.
Me neither.
Yeah, it's so good. So, yeah, and then came back, climbed Le Boucher, this time with one of my friends at Birrell, and then we went to Armadublam and climbed Armadublam and just had a great time. And just Arma is probably my favorite climb that I've done. It's really technical and tough, and I don't know, I seem to just like the stuff that's hard, but it was so enjoyable. Like I had a really great time on Armour, and still though my favorite view that I've come across so far is from Mirror Peak Summit. So I'd like definitely go back there again at some point. It's just, yeah, beautiful. But so, and then Funzo came to Armadublam and we're like, okay. And she said, I think you'll be fine on 8,000 meter peaks after she'd successfully climbed through. I'm like, okay. And so then that's when we started planning for Manaslu in 2017. And so I finally came back to Oz in December of 2016. And then, yeah, did a bit of work and stuff. And I actually sponsored Funzo to come out to Australia. So she came out in, I think it was the July, so winter. It wasn't great. And it was winter in Bendigo. I hadn't moved to Bright yet. So it was, it's not really Australia at its best, but, you know, and she's used to the cold, so it didn't bother her. So she came out and stayed for a month, and I introduced her to all my family. And I feel really bad because it's so hard for Nepalese to get tourist visas to come to Australia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I reckon it's easier to get a loan to buy a house.
Oh,
So yeah, I had to send like my bank statements, my pay slips. I had to write a letter of support. I had to write a letter detailing our itinerary. We had to like show intent to go back to Nepal, all that kind of stuff. But we got it done. And now that she's had the visa and been, so hopefully she'll come out again in Feb, early next year.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so she came and then we went back to Nepal together. And then did a little bit more training there, and then headed off for Manaslu, like our first big mountain, I guess.
Yeah, so training and you know, there's a lot of acclimatization you got to go through as well out in the mountains. So what sort of training do you do to sort of prepare for a feat like that?
Lots of like just heavy pack up a hill, fair bit of strength training, and then I actually like long rides on the roadie. So, because it's like, I would say it's like 50-50, like 50% physical, like it's good to be strong and fit, but then it's in your head too, because you get to a point where you're fighting your own survival instincts to keep going almost. So like you have to be able to push, like your body's screaming at you because just every step is such hard work. It's like your body's screaming at you to stop, but you need to be able to just be like, shut up, keep going. Yep. And so, yeah, a lot of like long solo rides and stuff too, a lot of that individual training. And then Funzo and I together then just doing, so we'd even just do, strength workouts and be there sort of pushing each other as well. And then back in Nepal, we went and did like some trekking with and really loaded our packs up, even heavier than what we carry on the mountain, just to suffer a little bit. And then we trekked in. It was even a mission just to get there, because it's Manaslu is normally in the autumn season, like is the primo season to climb it, but that means you're heading up at the tail end of monsoon. So you can always have a plan in Nepal, but plan not to go to plan.
Yeah. Definitely in a place like that, man. It's pretty rugged. I've had people on the podcast before who've all ridden the Yak Attack a couple of times, and they're just the same. You just can't plan for it.
Expect the unexpected. So like where we thought we would have started trekking after a day, it took us 3 days just with landslides, a Jeep breaking down, and then more landslides. So it was, pretty, but we had such a good time. So it was just her and I. We did our logistics through our mate's company. So it'd be her and I, and then our friend Lakpa will come with us, climb as a team of 3. And along the way, so our one luxury item is coffee. We love our coffee. So we carry a French press, and we carry beans from Kathmandu, from a place called Himalayan Java. And so, but this becomes a really good bartering like item, because everyone else works out you have good coffee and they want good coffee. It's like, well, what do you got? Like, what can you give us? So we met this group of internationals on the trip. There was like a German, Swiss, Polish, British, Spanish, an American, a Canadian, and I've like worlds collided again actually at Silk Road in regard to this team. One of those guys happened to be doing Silk Road this year, and I had no idea.
Yeah, right.
We bumped into each other at the airport, but they sort of adopted us, and they're a pretty cool group, and they I don't think they'd spent as much time in the Himalayas, so they were kind of just looking at Funzo and I being like, you two just look like you're out here to have fun. I'm like, well, isn't that why you're here? I'm like, it's got to be fun. I'm like, sure, there's a bit of suffering, but like, if you look at it the right way, that's also fun. And
it's the challenge.
Yeah. So Funzo and I had a great time. So we got to Samago, which is the main village before you head up to base camp. So we were there, and we're just going up with a few of our Sherpa mates and doing loads, carrying our gear up to base camp, come back down, and then go up with them. And there was one day, because my birthday is September 26th, so it was start of September we started moving our gear up, and one day we were just sitting at the tea house, and like helicopter lands and outside, and we're like, oh yeah, and then someone just carries in a big cake and gives it to me. They're like, oh, this is an early birthday present. I'm like, what? And it was like this massive Black Forest cake, and they're like, oh yeah, it was sent from Kathmandu, just an early birthday present. I'm like, oh sure. Everyone's like, who? And I'm like, no, I don't know who sent this. And then found out it was one of my mates, and so shared cake with everyone, which was good. And then went up the mountain. So I'm like, oh, it's nice to get a bit of good stuff before we go up.
Yeah, before the Sufferfest starts.
Yeah.
So how long from base camp to the summit did it take you?
So we were in base camp. We got there pretty early, but we did a rotation up to Camp 2 and stayed a couple of nights there, back down. And then we're looking at weather forecasts, and it turns out that the window was opening like basically around my birthday. And Funzo said, we have to summit on your birthday. And I'm like, oh, we probably should have left yesterday if that's what we're doing. And then she said, oh, do you think we can push in 3 days to summit? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah, let's give it a shot. We'll see how we go. And then we had quite a few mates who are all the base camp managers. So they're just staying in base camp, looking after everything. And they said, you have to come back from summit the same day back to base camp so we can have a birthday party. And I'm like, no promises. And I'm like, we can always do it the day after. They're like, no, it should be on your birthday. All right, well, anyway, we might see you on the 26th. We might see you on the 27th, maybe even the 28th. Let's see. And we went up and we were feeling good. So sort of we managed to get up on the summit on the 26th. Then we're up there quite early. I think it was 7:30 in the morning. And we started coming down, and I was like, we got to Camp 2 and a few mates were on their way up. So we just stopped and chatted to them, and they're like, you're going to go all the way down? I'm like, oh, I think we will. Like, we're feeling all right. And then we got to back down to Camp 1, and one of our kitchen boys had come up and he had boiled potatoes. And then I'd run out of water probably an hour earlier. And I was like, so I was pretty thirsty. It was pretty warm. And he walks up and holds out a potato, and he's like, do you want a Coke or a beer? I'm like, I'll take the beer. But then I cracked it and started drinking it, just sculled the whole thing. Oops. Don't know if I should have done that. I'm like, give me another potato. And I was like, now, and he said, you want some water as well? I'm like, water probably should have been the thing you led with there, but yeah, okay, I'll take take some water
Yeah,
now.
beer, the most dehydrating thing when you're exercising.
Yeah. Oh, so I was like, I actually was a little bit buzzy then. And I was like, oh, and it was a bit of a crevasse field just getting back between camp one back down to base camp. But I think we walked into base camp about 4 PM. So then everyone just came to our camp, and it was just beers, wine, everything, and music. And we were just dancing and having a few drinks, and got to about 9 o'clock, and Fun's are like, we want to go to bed. And they're like, no, it's your birthday. You have to drink the whole day of your birthday. I'm like, guys, no, you've all just been in base camp all day. Like the last few days, we were like up there this morning, pointing up at the summit.
Well, I've got to say, mate, you're making all this sound really easy.
Oh, no, it was hard. Well, then we were like, I said, if anyone wakes me up tomorrow morning, I'm going to throw rocks at you from my tent. And then we both slept till about lunchtime the next day.
Yeah, I bet you did.
Yeah. But it was, we were very lucky. I've always been so lucky actually with weather, but I never miss. A big part of the Sherpa culture is to do a puja and make offerings to the gods before a climb for safe passage. And I never miss a puja. And it's, I think, spending so much time. Most of my friends in Nepal are Sherpa or Tibetan. So I think I've sort of taken on a lot of like the Buddhist ideology and then the Sherpa culture as well. I have a massive respect for the Sherpa people and their beliefs and what the mountains mean to them. So and so far embracing it like I have. I mean, touch wood, I've also been very safe. So I like to definitely think there's something to that, and
Absolutely.
And it's always like you hear this terminology like, oh, they conquered this mountain. And I'm like, oh, I didn't conquer no mountain. Like I made it, and it was tough, and I suffered the whole way, and it was a magnitude of things aligning for me to be able to do that. It's
Absolutely.
yeah.
So did hitting that peak, did that sort of spur you on then to know you could have a turn at Everest?
Yeah. So, well, Funzo, she was, because she'd already climbed Choi Yu, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll go to Choi Yu as well. And she said, no, I think you were strong on Manaslu. And I'm like, oh, yeah. But so Funzo was born at 4,300 meters. So she's got some good genetics behind her. And I'm like, oh, you can, because I'm always to her, you can do it easy. For me, I'm from Denny, it's low and flat. And so I'm like, and it's funny because our starts probably couldn't be more opposite. You know what I mean? Like I got a full education. Funzo only finished school to year 6 because she was a girl. And yeah, just our upbringings. I grew up in the flattest part of Australia, whereas she grew up right up in the heart of the Himalayas. And but I don't know, it just works. And I think because we've shared so much too, like that bond's just so tight. And she actually, I couldn't go in 2019 to Pakistan because I had a mountain bike crash and broke 4 ribs. And
That'll do it.
yeah, she went and they didn't summit. And she's like, Sam, I need you here now, I realise. And I'm like, why? She's like, because you believe me and you'll stick up for me. And I think a few of the companies weren't like, they'd sort of told her to back off. She wanted to try again. And she's like, if you're here, then I don't have any of these problems. And it's the social worker in me, though. I'll be advocate for people till the day. But yeah, and I joke with it, not even joke, I'm always dead serious, and she just laughs. And I'm like, if we're planning an expedition, I'll start 6 months out and you start 2 weeks out, and then we should be about even in strength and fitness. She's like, no, you'll be fine. I'm like, no, I need to train. And for Everest, so yeah, that was 2017 September that we summoned to Manaslu, and then Funzo was like, well, we should go in spring. Like, oh, okay. So then I came back to Oz, and the guys actually at Bendigo Toyota were super supportive and helped me out a bit financially. And then just climbing with my friend's company meant the cost was a bit lower. And then I sort of only really needed help getting my oxygen up to Camp 4. So like sort of other loads up, Funzo and I are happy to do ourselves. So that kind of, and less Sherpa support, I guess. So that all brings the cost down a little bit. And also like some of the expeditions now are outrageous. Like people are paying 120 grand, but they're getting like food that's as good as what you get in a.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like a lot of people don't understand the cost to
Yeah,
climb Everest and the commitment that you've got to put in. And, you know, money's a huge part on being able to attempt it.
yeah. Well, the permit alone, so I think it went up last year or the year before, but even when I climbed, it was $10,000. And so it's like that's
Wild.
permit. That's before you eat anything, before you have like so they have the icefall doctors that set the route through the icefall. So a chunk like you pay for their salary, and then you've got liaison officers for the government, oxygen itself, then just the organization, I guess, like that costs money. So it's pretty spenny. And then now you've got these companies coming in that provide quite a, like I would call it a luxurious service. And for me personally, like that's not the way I would want to go, because I go to the mountains for an adventure and to feel like I'm away from the luxury in the cities. But yeah, so I'm pretty happy just eating dal bart all the time and potatoes. Like that's my Irish heritage. I'm pretty simple and easy to please.
I can pretty much eat like that here in Australia now and be happy.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but we so again, and for that, so that's when I first got introduced to Bright. So I think it was before I went to Manaslu, but I went to Mind Body Bike, a women's mountain biking event in Mount Buller, and there I met Christy, who I think you know as well.
Yep,
And she was training to do the Indie Pack at the time.
that's right.
Yeah, she spoke, and I kept in touch with Christy, um, and I actually just happened to be during the Indie Pack. I happened to be down on the Great Ocean Road when she was coming through, and so I'm like, oh, I'll ride to Apollo Bay with you, and we'll have lunch and stuff. So I did that with her, and again, it's just like having these awesome people around you. Then when I was going to Manaslu, she was like you've got this, and just that really encouraging, motivating mojo that she's got. And then after that, and when Funso and I decided we go to Everest, she said, if you ever want to come up to Brighton train, let me know. And I came up for a weekend once, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to be up here a lot more.
Very
So
much the same for me.
yeah, like your eyes are suddenly open. It's like, huh, I wish I knew about this place sooner. So yeah, then I came up and did quite a bit of training here. So I do my training camps, as I call them. So like ride to Falls and back on the roadie just solo, then go to two like pack hikes up Bungalow Spur in a day, go do big walk, because all that terrain is pretty perfect, just that constant uphill slog, and then the down as well, because like people, it's good to be doing the training going down when you're tired, because that's what gets you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, spent a bit of time here before I went back for Everest then, and then so went over there and had a good trip. Got a little bit of frostbite though. So
Yeah. So that's a part of what I wanted to ask. So when it comes from like, you know, you acclimatize at base camp, you'd already been to the first base camp before, obviously, previous
yeah,
to this time. And
yeah.
so the time it goes from the first base camp, what do you have to do then to summit it? What's all in between there?
Yeah. So from base camp to Camp 1, then you've got the Kumbu Icefall. And if ever you watch anything on Everest, they talk about that sort of being the most dangerous section. And that's because it's basically a moving glacier. So there's a lot of movement in it. And that's where these boys that I referred to earlier, the Icefall doctors, come in. So often in that team, it's the same team, or mostly the same team, that have a multitude of experience and years of experience with the iceball and fixing the route through it. So they're the guys that are going up with the ladders that you see, and that kind of stuff, finding the safest path up through. And then from day to day, there can be collapses in there. So they'll go and check the route and make sure that everything's still clear, or if something's reported back, they'll go have a look at it. And that is probably the most hectic part, because even with a little bit of heat, like you can feel the shift. We had a couple of times it'd just be a few small drops from above us. And it's like, oh, okay, that's get a little bit of powder. So that's pretty close. And but then you'd leave base camp at like 2 a.m. and try and move through in the night, and then just move as quickly as you can through there. There was once where we got stuck behind, there was a young girl that wanted to be the youngest Indian, I think, to climb Everest. She was only 16 and just moving pretty slowly, and so that sort of caused a little bit of a jam with us, and we're like, oh, someone just carry her. I mean, ideally you wouldn't probably be there if you haven't done the preparation, but yeah. And then camp 1 is just above that, so you sort of come out of the ice fall onto the Western Coombe, they call it. So it's just like this big snow and ice valley between, you've got like Nootsay off to you, if you're looking up, you've got Nootsay off to the right, Lhotse kind of in front of you, and Everest off to the left. So then camp 1 to camp 2 is pretty straightforward through the Western Coombe, nothing too gnarly or steep, just a few crevasses to keep an eye out for. And then camp 2 is kind of, I guess, like the main hub on the mountain. So a lot of people spend a few days there acclimatizing, which we did, and then went up to camp 3 and then back down to sleep in camp 2. Funzo and I, a bit naughty, do as we say, not as we do. So I was the leader for the Western team, and so I said to everyone, acclimatization is really important. You need to sort of make sure you're going up and down. And then Funzo and I actually just went from base camp directly to camp 2, whereas everyone sort of went and stayed camp 1, camp 2. And we got there and they're like, you went in camp 1 last night? And we're like, yeah, we just came from base camp this morning. And they're like, one guy's like, you said we shouldn't do that. I'm like, yeah. I said, but you haven't, like, they hadn't been over 5,000 meters before. So I'm like, we know our bodies pretty well. And I'm like, I wouldn't have kept going if I felt sick or whatever. So he's like, oh, okay. But yeah, so then climb up, come back down and sleep a bit. And then even do that a couple of times. Other teams will go and climb, like Labuche is a 6,000 meter peak not too far away. So people might even go climb that first and then come and do rotations up to camp 2 as well. And then we're back to base camp and then just waiting for a weather window. So in between is like Pumori is a mountain sort of behind opposite Everest. So you can like hike up to base camp there, or go up to Kalapatar, which is, a lot of people that have been to base camp would know it. So it's a little 5,500 meter peak that you can go up. So just doing hike.
Yeah, righto.
Well, comparative to the other hills around, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do that kind of stuff to keep moving, because then you're just waiting for the weather window. So and you can see the snow being blown off the summit. So that's what they call the jet stream. So you're waiting for that wind to go, because like even early on when some boys were doing some loads up, I think dropping some tents at Camp 4, one of the Sherpa boys just took his glove off for like 2 minutes and froze all his fingers. So, and that's when that was still pretty high up there. So yeah, it's important to wait until the weather's as primo as it gets, really.
Yep. So when you went for the summit, did you get exactly what you wanted, like when it came to weather-wise and conditions for climbing?
The weather and all that was really good. We made maybe a slight error of judgment, I think. We'd been moving pretty well up the mountain, and leaving camp 4, we probably left about 2 hours after everyone else, just thinking, like, looking at the time, how we'd been moving, we're like, that should get us up the summit like by 7 or 8 in the morning. And 2 hours in, we caught the tail end of the people that had left before us. And it was sort of on a steeper section up towards the balcony. So that meant there was a bit of standing around. Like, I got to the point where I was just kind of gently pushing people to try and get them to keep moving, and trying to get around people where you can in the dark on a steep slope. It's a bit tricky. But then, and it's weird because my feet are normally fine. My hands are the thing that get cold, and they were feeling all right. So I'm like, oh, must be all right. And I was just moving my feet all the time, just doing all that kind of stuff. And when we got to the balcony, quite a few people stopped there to rest. So we're like, okay, we'll just keep going. And then it was all right from up there. But it is like that. They always say that hour before sunrise is the coldest. So it was, you start to like hang for that sunrise to come. And yeah, but geez, it's magical when it hits. But it was so the weather, the conditions were good. Like we were really lucky with that. And I think it was more just that being stood still for too long. That's probably what caused the frostbite. But we went up to summit. It was nice because a few of my mates that were guiding, they were up there with their clients. So sort of just gave them some hugs and stuff. And then coming down, there's definitely some people that were pretty cooked. So there was a girl actually kept sitting down. I'm like, you have to get up, you have to keep moving. And so I just want to rest. I'm like, just rest just get down at least to Camp 4, but further down if you can. So a bit of that stuff. But I got back to Camp 4 and just like looking after, being mindful of the cold. I'd been changing my socks all the time. So I went to just stop and change my socks and took my socks off. And I was like, oh shit, my toes are a bit purple. And then I'm like, oh no.
Oh boy.
Yeah, a frostbite. And so then but I had some ibuprofen with me, and so I took some ibuprofen, just like drank as much water as I could, refilled my drink bottle, melted some ice, and then I still had a bit of oxygen left because I wasn't using too much, so I just cranked that up. So all of that stuff will help like with circulation. And then obviously just getting the oxygen in to get you warm, especially your extremities, because your body, as your oxygen supply is cut off, your body just starts to protect itself. So the last thing it really cares about are your toes and your fingers.
Yep.
And then just like boosted down really as quickly as possible. And then back in base camp, so they call it the Everest ER. So there's a couple of doctors there. One of the boys was an Aussie actually from Geelong. And so then they got my toes, and we sort of just put them in like almost body temperature water and stuff. And they're like, oh, I think your big toe is pretty bad. And I'm like, yeah, I think so too. And then, so they're like, you shouldn't walk on this. And so that I'm like, oh, do we get a heli? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And so then it was pretty cool because the heli pilot was one of my mates, Maurizio. So he's like, do you have good insurance? I'm like, yeah. He's like, want to do a scenic flight on the way out? I'm like, sure. And so he's like going up over Camp 1 and then back down and out the valley again. It was so nice. I'm just like, this is sick.
Yeah, this is keeping my mind off my nearly dead toe.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's it, like, because it wasn't like, they're just like, if you walk on it, you're going to cause lots of damage. They're like, but you've got time. Ideally, I wanted to be at the hospital to start. So then I started these infusions called iloprost, which like open up your blood vessels and stuff. So I had those for 5 days in hospital in Kathmandu. But it was so nice. Like a few of my mates have restaurants and stuff. And one of his chefs had worked in Australia. So they like made me a pavlova and stuff and brought that to the hospital. And it's very spoiled. I'm like, oh, like, you guys need to come to Australia and bring me food when I'm in hospital there.
Yeah. So what happened with your toe in the end? How'd they sort it?
So, well, we just kind of dressed it and stuff in Nepal, and then got back to Australia. And then I'd emailed Andrew, my hip surgeon. I was like, this is what's going on. And in Nepal, they'd done a scan, like a bone scan, and that had shown that like the top, the bone in the top half was done. It was dead. Like I'd frozen it down to the bone. And so he had an appointment with me the day after I got back with a toe surgeon from Melbourne Ortho as well. And then that's Tim. So he then also booked me an appointment with the hyperbaric oxygen treatment crew at the Alfred. And so I went and started having some hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatments, which speeds up healing. They use it a lot, I think, for diabetes patients that have wounds that don't heal so well. And funnily enough, Ian that treated me at the Alfred, he has also done a little bit of climbing in Nepal. So we had some great chats. And then it further turned out that he's Ali, a local girl here, it's her dad. So I'm just like,
Right.
the world is so small.
It is.
So yeah, I had treatment there and just to get as much healing out of it as we could. And initially, even the tips of so there was like 3 that had really obvious frostbite. So the big, then second and third toes on my left foot. And they were a little bit worried about the second and third toes as well. But after the hyperbaric therapy, they were like, oh, no, they're actually fine. But then it was very clear that the tip of the left toe had to come off. So, I had surgery, I guess, like 3 weeks after I got back. It was weird waking up from that and just looking at my foot and being like, that's so weird. Like half my toe.
Oh, half a toe shorter in my foot now. Yeah.
And it's like, and it's true what they say about the phantom pain and stuff. I'd wake up and be like, my toenail hurts. And then I'm like, I don't have a toenail anymore.
Did it affect like the first little bit with balance and stuff, walking around bare feet? Because big toe is a pretty important one.
Yeah, it does. And even now still, like just in the gym with like lunges and stuff, and even doing Pilates, like with Mims, like she'll do a fair bit of balance stuff at the end. And like, I really have to like, I guess it's good for my core and all the stabilizing muscles because I really have to work if I'm just balancing on that one foot.
Yep.
But then as Ian said to me at the time, like, well, the best kind of shoes you can wear are probably mountaineering boots because they're so rigid. Yeah. So like, oh, that just means I have to keep climbing then because
bingo.
and now my rock climbing shoes aren't so tight on the left foot. I'm like, I want to just take the tip of my right big toe off.
Balance it out, Yeah. So we skipped over this. So getting onto the summit of Everest and seeing the sunrise, what was that like? That's going to be a good way to finish off this story.
Oh yeah, it was otherworldly. You can actually see the curvature in the earth from the summit, and yeah, it's still hard to. Sometimes I look back at videos, I'm like, no, that's definitely me there, and it was very surreal. I think it was pretty incredible. Like we're up there for about 20 minutes, just taking in the view, and it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, it looked just all photos I've ever seen from the top. It just looks, amazing, otherworldly, like you said. Yeah, pretty amazing stuff. So, did you feel a pretty big sense of accomplishment after doing that one?
Yeah, definitely. And with like, I don't know, just talking to Funzo after, I said to her, because she actually left base camp a day after me, but in the process became the fastest woman to climb Everest. So
right on.
Yeah, so that was sick. So that was just another, and I don't know, it was just a great year to climb. Like there was a record number of Nepalese women. So Funzo and I were mentoring them a bit, and one of the girls that just didn't know how to use some gear, like I just gave her my stuff that she knew how to use, and I just took some of her gear, and like it was just it's great. Like a big element of it, I think that was the start of like just women becoming more involved in mountaineering, and it was really cool to be a part of that and like celebrating that with women. Like I don't know, and it's, I mean, and we'll talk about it more with bikes as well, but there's just something about like having the women there too, which is really special, and just accomplishing that with one of my best friends. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. That's so awesome. And her being the fastest Nepalese woman to climb Everest as well, it's a pretty big achievement for both years because you work so well together as well. So again, we're talking about that whole passive heroism at the start. So obviously worked and helped her out too. So that's so sick.
Yeah.
So moving on now, this has become a mountaineering podcast instead of a bike podcast, which I knew it was going to because I've always wanted to hear this story from you. I've been wanting to get you on this show for ages, but we just never got around to it. But now we're going to talk about bikes for a bit. So was it when you came to Bright, was it when you first started like really looking at mountain biking more and going, hey, I want to get into this?
Yes. So came back after Everest, and I was actually in Bright for one of my best friend's birthdays, and it must have been the weekend of darker days. So we were at the brewery, and I bumped into Rupert, who was the ops manager at the time, and I'd met him over the summer. And I said, I think I want to move to Bright. he said, well, we can give you a job at the brewery. You can start next week. And I'm like, oh, I might need a couple of weeks, but sure. And then it worked out that Chrissy was going to Thailand, so she had a room that I could have and everything. I'm like, I think this is fate telling me I need to move to Bright.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I moved here, and I think the second day I moved here, I went and borrowed a bike from the boys at ATC, and just went out on a stumpy, and because I'd only ever ridden sort of really basic cross country stuff, and rode up Mystic and did Hero, I think the famous old Hero, and just I don't know, like loved it, and just rode a bit more, and then started looking at bikes. And then Matty at ATC was selling his enduro, and he's like, well, I think it'll be a good setup for you as a first bike and that kind of stuff. So I bought that and just started riding all the time and riding with the local boys here. I don't know, I was just following their wheels, and so I never really did any skills stuff. So even now I still think my technically my riding's not that clean, but I think that pushed me to probably ride pretty quick, and probably some gnarlier stuff that if I was doing it all myself, I probably wouldn't have ridden for a long time. And quickly realised that flying down a hill, especially down the techie stuff, I love tech, I've worked out, is insanely fun. Yep. And so I was like, I really like this.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, so you got involved with a lot of women's groups as well. I met you through racing and stuff, and especially out here with the Vic Enduro series. I mean, you're always riding with the Morgs and all the usual crew of girls. And, and I've watched in the 5 years I've lived here full time, being involved in racing and everything, like the women's groups are getting bigger and bigger every race. And then like your crew just seems to be growing as well. Yeah. And so it's pretty awesome.
It's so sick. Like one of the best things I ever did was enter a race and just met these girls, and Morgs, Rach, and then we've like taken a few of the younger ones under our wings now, like there's Tay, one of the local girls. And it's like, and it's so good, and I love it. Like I'm definitely, growing up with two brothers, I'm definitely way more competitive with boys, and so it's nice just to be out there, and the girls are all so encouraging. And it was nice. Even Laura, one of the local girls, works at the brewery with me, came out with Morgs, Tay and I the other day, and she's like, it's so nice to ride with you girls, like, because she's like, I maybe wouldn't have ridden this stuff if I wasn't with you. And like even in the women's group, like they'll, on a Wednesday, it's like there might be some beginners, so they'll do one trail, and the girls that want to push a little bit harder will go do other trails. And it's just so encouraging, and it's so good to see the number of women just coming along to races is increasing so much.
Yep, absolutely. It's growing so quick, and I just want to see it continue to grow, because it's sad to see that XC racing is sort of kind of dying. And I've had a few people on the podcast that race elite still, but they're just like, it's getting smaller every race, but enduro is just exploding.
Yeah,
it's racing for everybody. It's anyone can do it.
Yeah, exactly right.
It can be daunting, but it's still just growing. Like even look at down at Red Hill when they had their all women's gravity enduro, I went down and did a podcast for them, and like just seeing 100 women out, and they couldn't fit anymore, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it's so sick to see, and Catherine's like such a bloody legend. Yeah, it's amazing what she does for women's mountain biking down around that Melbourne area. It's incredible.
Absolutely. With Warburton on the horizon finally now, I think we might see more of an increase of it as well.
Yeah, it's so good. And enduro just having like the 4-stage version of the race, so people that might not race because of certain trails in it, it gives like even more people the opportunity to get out and give it a go.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So, sorry, there's just a loud noise outside. So when did you start thinking about racing, like bike packing races? Was the Silk Road your first one?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So I'd never done any bike packing really before. And funnily enough, things always keep coming back to mountaineering. But a girl I met on Armour Dublin from the UK in 2016, she just sent me a message. Oh, it must have been, I reckon it was just before all of the coronavirus shit hit. And she's like, would you be interested in doing this race with me? And I just said yes, and I didn't read what it was. I just thought it was a bike race. And then I looked at what it was after I said yes. And then
2,000 Ks of mountain road in Kyrgyzstan. Yeah, awesome.
holy shit. And she's like, I'm like, I just read this, it looks gnarly. And she's like, you still keen? I'm like, yeah, of course. And so yeah, then obviously the bloody world stopped for a couple of years. So couldn't go in 2020, couldn't go in 2021. And then as things started reopening, I'm like, all right, I need to start. I'm doing it this year. Everything's going to be fine, I'm sure. Like, and so I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. And then unfortunately, Holly had a few health issues throughout the year, so she's like, I can't make the race. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then I emailed Nelson. I'm like, is it fine if I switch to solo? He's like, yep, absolutely, done. I'm like, all right, well, I'm doing it. And then I'm like, okay, so I need to buy gear. I need to get some bags. I have no idea what I'm doing. And then I took my bike with me. So in April, I went to Nepal and just spent some time in the mountains trekking and all that kind of stuff. And I had my bike, so doing some rides and stuff around Nepal, which was beautiful. And then I'm like, I still haven't done any bike packing. So this was all just riding, like day rides and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some friends going to India, opening a hotel in Dharamsala, and they said, do you want to come? And I said, yeah, okay. And then I'm like, well, I've been reading these bike packing books about the Manali Leh highway up into Ladakh. And I'm like, maybe I'll come and actually do some bike packing before I do Silk Road. I probably should do something.
Yeah, you know.
And so, yeah, I ended up, went and hung out in Dharamsala for just over 10 days and then went to Manali. And a couple of my mates came because they just wanted to come there. And then I said goodbye to them in Manali and started riding up towards Leh, so in Ladakh, which is stunning, absolutely beautiful. I'm so glad I went. And
yeah, I've been wanting to ride a motorbike from the other side and come up that side of it as well. And yeah, it's something I'm planning to do hopefully in the next couple of years.
Yeah, mate, you should. It's bloody beautiful. I met a lot of people on motorbikes. And yeah, and there's a few passes over 5,000 meters on the route. So that was kind of perfect for Silk Road because I knew the highest point was a bit over 4.2. And so, but I still, it was a bit chill. I think I was doing maybe 70 to 80K a day and still around 15 to 1,800 meters of vert. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I don't want to go too hard because then I only really had a week after that trip would end before I'll go to Kyrgyzstan. So, yeah, went from Manali to Leh, and then from Leh I went over Kardungla. So I think it's now the second highest motorable pass in the world, but it's about 5,400 meters, and it's not great for the soul because you're in your granny gear going about 5K an hour, barely able to breathe. I was just trying to push through 3K at a time before I'd have a rest because this is fucked.
Far out.
But and even then, I think I was only probably carrying about 23 kilos. So I knew I'd be carrying a bit more for Silk Road. I'm like, you need to harden up. And then I went up sort of out to the Nubra Valley towards the Pakistani border and then came back along towards Pangong Lake. And that's sort of along the Tibetan or Chinese border now, they would call it. And I had a bit of a mishap there. So it was pretty hot, quite hot. And this is at 3,500 meters. And so you're sort of in the valley with the mountains either side. And I got to a point, and luckily there was some motorbike riders I caught up to, but I went to cross the first bit of a river crossing and it's all this glacial water and it's a bit later in the day. So obviously the melt rate's a lot higher. So it's pretty strong. And I started going and my front wheel just tipped down and must have caught the water. And so then the river's just spun my bike. I've lost my footing a bit and then the bike's kind of gone on its side. And then I managed to just adrenaline, I think, just got me across to the next sort of slower point. I was like, oh, and then I just sat my bike down for a second, went to regroup and realised the zipper on my top bag was open. And then I was like, where's my phone? Oh, shit. It's in the river. And then I got to the next point. I couldn't find it. And then I just like got over to where the guys were. They were like waving me over. They helped grab my bike and they're like, "You all right?" And I'm like, "Oh, I think I just lost my phone." And they're like, "Oh, do you want to try and find it?" I'm like, "Nah, man, it's gone. Don't worry. It's fine." And then so they helped me get across the next bit. We're doing like human like chains to get across. And then sort of kept riding. They're like, "You keep going. We've heard there's one more." I'm like, "Okay." So I kept riding, and then they caught up to me again, and they're like, helped me get the bikes across. One of the motorbikes nearly got swept away. Like it was
Far
all
out.
chaotic. And I'm like, thank God these guys were there, because in my head I'm like, I actually don't know how I would have got across, but I don't know. I would have worked it out. I'm sure. Maybe not
Well, that's
sure.
trial by fire for training for Silk Road.
Oh, exactly. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, all this stuff's really good for me. And yeah, and then rode along to Pangong Lake, which is on the border, and it's so beautiful. Like just all this stuff that's in the middle of nowhere essentially is incredible. So yeah, camped there. It was bloody stunning. And then I went back around to Lay. So that was, I think, 9 days in total. A fair bit of vert and a few Ks. I think about 900 Ks. So just shy of half a Silk Road.
Mhm.
But then I'm like, but in only a couple of days less, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to up my game for Silk Road. So yeah, managed to get back to Nepal, got myself a new phone because I need to be able to listen to podcasts and music and all
Yeah.
the rest. And then yeah, just chilled really for a week. I dragged one of my mates out for a bike ride, it was 50K up to Nuggakot, just out of Kathmandu, and he was pretty happy. And all the like my Tibetan friends that had opened the hotel in Dharamsala, they've all been and bought bikes because they're like, "Oh, we're just watching you ride, and it makes us just want to ride bikes." And I'm like, "Cool." I said, "Well, I'll get out, ride bikes. We'll do it one of these trips around Nepal next time I'm back."
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, so good. So yeah, and then flew to Kyrgyzstan from Nepal. And and this is where we come full circle also from the Manaslu trip. So I was in the airport in Bishkek waiting for my bike, and I had my saddlebag because I was a bit over or whatever. So they're like, just take it as carry on. And a guy comes up to me and he's like, "Oh, is that a saddlebag?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, waiting for a bike." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, are you doing Silk Road?" And I said, "I am." And um, he's held out his hand. He said, "Oh, I'm Darren." And I'm like, held out my hands and wearing masks and everything. And he had a hat on because COVID stuff. And said, "Oh, I'm Sam." And he's like, "Are you from Australia?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Have you climbed Manaslu?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then he pulled down his mask and he's like, "I'm Darren from Jenny's team." And I'm like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, that's crazy.
So crazy. And so yeah, we had no idea. So then we like took a photo because he's still in a group chat with all those guys and sent it to them. So yeah, that was really cool. And then just went into Bishkek and built my bike up and stuff. And um, at this point, so while I was in Ladakh, I noticed some play in my cranks and took it to the bike shop back in Kathmandu, and we pulled my bottom bracket out, and the bottom bracket had worn, like the frame had worn unevenly. So my bottom bracket, you could just pull it straight
Oh
in and out.
boy.
Yeah. So sent the legends at Specialized some photos and videos, and I'm like, I think I need a new frame. They're like, "Yep, we'll sort that out." And then I just the guys at the bike shop got some sort of like super glue that they use on their motorbikes and just glued my bottom bracket into my frame. Like, hopefully this holds up now for like, and obviously I knew there were going to be river crossings, varying temperatures and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, I just need this thing to work for, 13, 14 days and
Yeah.
1900K. But funnily enough, like the bottom bracket held up just fine. So yeah, got everything sorted, then went to Osh where the start line was, sort of down in the south. And met like quite a few riders, which was really cool. So there was 4 guys from Australia, and I met Eleanor, a girl from the US, and then Jenny, a British girl who actually, funnily enough, also does a bit of climbing. And yeah, just met like just really cool people. Like it was already, I'm like, oh, this is going to be sick. Like it's going to suck, but it's going to be sick at the same time. And then obviously, so the started at midnight, and like I couldn't bloody sleep at all during the day. I'm hoping I can have a nap, but I think I was just too anxious.
Yeah.
And like, because I just had no idea what I was getting myself into. And at registration earlier that day too, I'd rocked up with my hardtail, which was ideal, like actually probably the perfect bike for it. But just like all these other guys had like rest bars and like these little snack bags, and I'm like, oh fuck.
Haven't even started yet, and I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, I'm like, these guys are pros. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And and they were just like, oh, have you done much bike packing? I'm like, nah. Any tips you've got, I will take, like anything. And they're all just like, don't scratch at night. That was kind of the main thing. And just keep going. I'm like, okay, that kind of stuff I can deal with. Cool. And yeah, so we kicked off at midnight, rode through the night, and in hindsight, like, and I'd planned to probably not go too hard for the first half, like the first 950 Ks. And in hindsight, I probably should have slept as the sun came up because I got real tired, but I didn't. I just kind of kept pushing. And then I caught up to Eleanor, and she was having some lunch. So I stopped and had lunch where she was having lunch. And then like there was a bit of a group around, we're sort of on and off just passing each other. And then we got to a yurt. So the first pass, Diptych Pass, was 4,200 meters. And there was a yurt camp sort of before, and they're like, if you don't think you'll get over the pass, stop at the yurt camp. And again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. So it was just, I think it was like maybe 4 in the afternoon or maybe 5. And I kind of let a guy talk me out of going any further. He's like, oh, I've heard the trail's not great and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just stay here. And then got up in the morning, and as I went, I'm like, oh, this trail's fine. And again, this is where the climbing experience I think came in very handy, because exposure doesn't worry me much at all. And I'm just like, oh, this was pretty chill. I probably could have gone a bit further. And I caught up to a few people because I'd been in Nepal for a while, like, and I'd been in Ladakh. Acclimatization wise, I was sweet. So I kind of just cruised up and caught up to a few guys and sort of passed them, and they were struggling a bit. And then even down the other side, I caught up to quite a few people that they'd said, oh, it was hard work. It took them, some of them, like 8 to 10 hours to get over the pass. But to be fair, like, even I would say it was some of the hardest hiking. Like, for one section, it was just like straight up loose shaly dirt, and you push the bike, pull the brakes on, take 2 steps. But even sometimes the bike would just start sliding back down because it was so heavy. And I'm like, I actually don't know if I can physically get up over this hill with my bike. But yeah, just like head down, just push, like don't stop pushing.
Push
Got
through
there.
the pain.
But yeah, but then the descent was sick. Like, so it was single because it was a hiking trail. And then yeah, got back on and just started descending, and I was having so much fun then. It was like the hills just mimicked obviously the emotions you're going through, because you'd be going up and be like, this is shit, this is hard, it's like so hard. But then the downhills, like, I'm like, oh, this is so fun. Like, and you just forget about how miserable you were 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's funny, when I was writing this episode, I was watching a video that was made from the it was the 2021, I think, Silk Road race. And he's like exactly talking about that, pushing up hills. And he just had a video of him just like pushing and then doing like one big stride. And then he'd be like, let brakes off, push again, another big stride. He's just, the look on his face was just pure horror. He's like, fuck this.
So cooked.
Yeah.
Oh, but then so fun. But it was, I think this was the first year Nelson said they took it in the south. So it meant the first like 3 or 4 days, it was like 40 odd degrees or more. And so just trying to manage the hydration was like, that was tough. And then just trying to keep eating when it's really hot. It's like hard work, and eating's never normally an issue for me. Like, that's normally when people know something's wrong, if I stop eating. But yeah, and then so I had that for a few days, but then we went back up into the hills and it was like minus 15 degrees again. And it's just like your body's trying to work out what's going on. And there was one day when I was riding and I'm like, oh, there should be a river not too far away, looking on the map. And then I got there and I'm like, fuck, it's dry. And I'm like, oh, now I have to choose between eating and drinking water. And I'm like, so I just saved the water for drinking. And the next morning, like, it was funny, I finally got to this village and start filling up from a little stream. And then I like look up and I noticed there was a couple of toilets up from where I was. And I was like, looked at my water. I'm like, fuck it, just drop 3 tabs in instead of like 1. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to drink this water.
Yeah. Things you got to do.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm just like, I don't care. And yeah, it was like, I think it was only day 2, late in the afternoon too. But and the one thing I was worried about was mechanical work. Like I'm just, the guys at ATC are too good. So I'm always just like, here's my bike. I think this is the problem. Help me. And so, yeah, I like noticed my gears weren't working properly, but it's also, everything is such an effort when you're not sleeping much and riding your bike 14 hours a day. And so I was just like, oh, I'll just keep riding a little bit, get to a place where I can probably set up camp and then I'll check it. And then I realised my entire derailleur cage was broken.
Oh.
And so I was like, oh, what do I do? And then I had some cable ties because cable ties are good for everything. So luckily I brought cable ties and super glue. And so I was able to like kind of realign my cage back up, sort of so it was resting against my jockey wheel, and cable tied it in place. And then I'm like, I don't know how long this will last. There's 2 bike shops in Kyrgyzstan and they're both in Bishkek, at which point was about 1,200 kilometers away.
Oh boy.
I was like, I'm just going to ride this thing out with a cable tie and a dream, really.
No scenic heli rides to get there?
No. Anyway, so like every day I was just riding and like hoping that this cable tie was going to hold, and it did. Like for so many days it started to get to a point where the chain would drop a bit and it'd like unloop from the top jockey wheel, so I'd have to feed it back in and do that kind of stuff. But I got pretty efficient at doing that because I knew straight away what had happened. But there was one then the sad day. So it had been pretty brutal. I was up on it's called the Arabelle Plateau, so 3,800 meters, and just had this crosswind for hours. And I was like, this is why people use noise as torture, because noise can be torture. The wind in my ears, I was like, wanted to just scream at the sky to like, shut the fuck up. I'm like, just the wind in my head, and I'm like, ah! And then I got to a bit and it was just this grassy, not much of a track there. And then I'm like, oh, I think I can ride this bit. Got back on and just going a bit slow and got caught up on a rock, like fell off. And I'm like, fuck's sake, bruised my knee. And then, and again, like it was just the part of the roller coaster where I was going up, and I'm like, this is just fucked. Like, this is type 3 fun. This isn't even going to be fun. When I think about this later, this part, it's not going to be fun. And I still agree with that sentiment. But then there'd been a big landslide for one section, which we knew about, and but we knew that we could still get across, but had to carry our bikes across all the rocks and stuff. And then it was like steep down hiking trail. And I thought for all this time I was kind of going up and then doing this traverse. I'm like, at least it's going to be downhill soon, at least. And then I got, and I'm like, fuck, you can't even ride your bike down this. But so then hiking down, But then I got to the point where I could finally ride my bike again. And I probably started riding when it was still a bit sketchy. So I caught up to a few guys on that section that were off just walking, and they're like, you riding? And I'm like, if there's something like my experience is good for here, it's these downhill descents and it's the mountains. And I was actually having a fair bit of fun, and to the point where I just was probably a little bit tired, but also having a good time just boosting down this fire road, bit in my own little world. And then I like suddenly there was like a water run in front of me, and I'm like, shit, and like ripped on the brake, skidding sideways, and I thought I was going to have a massive crash. And then luckily like my bike pulled up and I was okay. And I'm like, okay, now you need to calm down.
Yeah.
Like,
take a chill pill.
Yeah. Like, that would have been so bad. I'm like, you're in the middle of nowhere. Like, luckily we had trackers at least, so it's like someone would be able to find me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just like, oh no, you're being silly. Just calm down a bit. And so like this descent went for ages. It was so nice. I actually was having a great time. And then I hit a few corrugations, and then I heard a noise in my back end. And I've looked down, and my chain like was up, sort of almost up the side of my cassette and the jockey wheel. And I'm like, what? And it was like, and it had gotten dark by this point, and I was just like what just happened? And then I stopped, and I'm trying to fix it. And a couple of the guys that I'd passed earlier, they like caught up to me. They're like, "You all right?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's fine. You guys keep going," because it wasn't too far. Like, we weren't far from a checkpoint. So I'm like, "It's all right." And luckily, so I hadn't been in a village for, I reckon, 200k, and this just happened to like all go to shit about 12k's from a town. I was
Right.
like, thank God. And so I like walked and then could roll a few bits, and I got there and went into this little shop that, thank God, was still open, because I'd almost run out of food. I was down to my last Snickers, I think. Walked in there and just wandered around, like got chips, chocolate, like they have like this round bread stuff, got one of them. I was just everything, like bottle of Fanta, bottle of water, just mindlessly buying stuff, and put it all down. And then I just went outside, and I was sitting on the ground with my head against the wall, just eating chips and chocolate at the same time, being like, oh, what's wrong with my bike? I'm like, I just need to eat and drink something. And then I had a look and could see, I'm like, I couldn't work out how to fix it at the time. And then I reckon I was there for probably an hour or a bit more. And so it was probably almost 11 o'clock. And one of my mates, Dan, who happens to work for Specialized, he was on holidays in Canada. I'm like, he'll be awake. Like, this is perfect. I'm going to call. And I called him. I'm like, mate, I can't, something's up with my bike. Like, it's cooked. I think it's more than just the cable tire failing. And he's like, can you take your back wheel off and send me a photo? And I'm like, take my back wheel off? He's like, yeah, take your axle out and just take your back wheel off. I'm like, no, I can't do that. He's like, well, I just can't right now. I'm like, if you make me do that, I'm going to start crying. So I'm going to keep eating my chips, and I'm going to have a sleep, and then I'm going to call you back in 4 hours, and then I can take my back wheel off.
Far
like,
out.
okay, you sound cooked. I'm like, yeah, I need to sleep. I'm like, I think I woke up at 4 this morning, and I think it was nearly 11 o'clock by this point. And yeah, so I had to sleep and woke up and stuffed around with it for ages, and like even tried to swap my jockey wheels around. But the top jockey wheel I worked out had worn unevenly. I reckon it's because the cage wasn't sitting neat up against it. So the chain had been slowly wearing away. So I tried a few different things, and I was like, fuck. And the time for the checkpoint was like closing in. And then one of the guys, like, I think I put up something on maybe Instagram or something, and he'd replied from Bishkek being like, I could get a derailleur to you. And I'm like, where are you? But that would have meant it wouldn't have been an official finish anyway, because that would
Right.
be
Yeah, supported.
Yeah. And so he's like, oh, I'm in Bishkek. I'm like, mate, 7 hours away. And I was like, look, it's fine. I'm like, that's race over for me for this year. And then I was like, sat there, I was a bit sad for a while. And then I was like, then a couple of the girls, then I like was at a checkpoint, and the girls like, do you want some cake? I'm like, yes. And then that like I can just eat all the good food, and I don't have to run off 4 hours sleep and do all that stuff anymore. So I'm like, all right, you win some, you lose some. I'm like, now I can just focus on eating again.
Yeah, that's it. And then you're going, okay, set your sights for another one. Because like I've known a few people who have like not made it through a couple of these bikepacking races. And they go, fuck, I got to go finish one. So what's the next one?
So next one is from the 4th of February, very soon, the Atlas Mountain Race in Morocco.
Awesome.
So yeah, very, very keen for that. And I'll go back, I reckon, to Silk Road in 2024 is my plan. I want to get back there, and either with a spare derailleur or the ability to set my bike up as a single speed easily if I need to. But yeah, so I'm like, the opportunity came up. I said yes. So I'm
That's
I'm
awesome.
looking for. I don't know if I'll see any kangaroos in Morocco like I did in Kyrgyzstan one night, but that's when I worked out that I need to sleep. If you start
Yeah, probably.
Kyrgyzstan, it's time for a nap.
Yeah. Oh boy. No, that's so awesome, mate. What a story. It's you seem to be able to push through a lot of that pain that a lot of people would usually just give up on. And I think that's what makes an athlete to be able to do these sorts of, sports, mountaineering and these mountain like bikepacking journeys. Everyone
Yeah,
I've spoken to who's into that shit, they're just another level above what I consider fun. But I totally get it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, we come to the end of it. We've done all the questions,
Excellent.
and I got a good story out of it. So, yeah. No, I've always wanted to sit down and talk to you about your Everest trip, and then, and now, it's out. I finally
Yeah,
heard it all, and now other people can hear it.
yeah.
So, yeah. So, are you going to race any this before you head off to Morocco? Are you going to race any of the enduros?
I don't think I'll race before, but I'm keen as mustard because I know you and the boys. I'm bloody so upset that the road up to Falls is closed, but I'm
Yeah.
hoping and praying I will definitely be at the Falls Enduro.
Yeah, cool. It's in April. So yeah, we've got a bit of time. We've lost everything this summer, but we're still cracking on up there and we'll still put on a sick event, hopefully, with hopefully something
Yeah,
new to show as well. So yeah.
yeah. I'm very, very keen. That's number one on my race agenda is Falls
Awesome.
Enduro.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I'll be following on what you're doing anyway. It'd be good to see you there.
yeah.
Well,
Awesome.
thanks for coming on and where can people follow along your adventures?
I'm at Sammy Mick, SAMMYMC on Instagram. And yeah, I'm always posting stuff there. A lot of cooked stories from the roads when I'm struggling. So very,
Awesome.
very entertaining, I think.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show, mate. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
So that's the end of the episode, and I hope you really enjoyed that chat with Sammy. She's a very energetic person and has accomplished a lot in her life so far, and I'm looking forward to see where she goes next. So you can follow her along, as she said, at SammyMC on Instagram, and you can follow me at the TSG Bikecast on Instagram, and also see our beautiful faces on YouTube on my channel, That Stoked Guy. So anyway, that's it for this one. We'll see you next time, and who is coming on next? We shall see. See you, everyone. Bye.